Hello and welcome to another episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. Today I have financial planner Leonard Haasbroek with me. Leonard, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, no, I'm very well. And thank you for this opportunity to share some info and to share some information with your viewers.
So, can you firstly just start by telling us a bit more about yourself?
All right, just a quick background on myself. I've studied at the Northwest University in Potchefstroom, and throughout my whole career, since I've done my studies, I've been in the financial industry. I first worked for the ABSA Group, starting in the student industry with the ABSA Group. I later moved over to management within ABSA. Then I moved over to the insurance field, where I'm working for PPS. First as a consultant in the insurance industry, and then moved over to management there. And yeah, just throughout my career, I just realized that there's such a vast amount of information available, and sometimes when you speak to clients, when you speak to people that want to sort out their finances, it's important that we keep educating and keep bringing new information to the market and to clients. So that's really my heart. That's why I'm in the financial industry, really to make complex information understandable and bring that information to clients.
Amazing. Okay, so today we are going to be discussing a very interesting topic. Well, interesting to me, which is financial planning and specifically also financial planning for women. So, Leonard, you just mentioned that financial education is so important. Why would you say it's especially important for women, and how can they educate themselves financially?
Yeah, I think we live in a lucky era in terms of what's available on social platforms, where you can really educate yourself. There's a lot of books that's been written about finances, but again, it's a lot of information. To choose the correct information, what works for you, what you hear from family members and friends, what you hear from financial advisors. So there's a lot of info. I think the important thing is just to keep educating yourself. You will never be a guru in terms of finances. Even with us that works in this industry, we learn new things every day. Whenever we interact with clients, we learn new information from the clients when we bring them answers. But I think it's just an important thing to be open to learning and not just to sit back and say, but this is only going to happen to me, or I've never been in control of my finances and I'm not taking control of it. Because even if you trust somebody like a financial advisor, it's still important to test that information. I think when we move around on the different universities and tertiary institutions in South Africa, it's sad to see that you can study a professional qualification, maybe in the medical field or in the law field or in business. But in terms of those qualifications, they never teach you things like how to handle your own insurance. They never teach you how to start your own business and run your own business. They don't teach you things like how to do your tax. And I mean, everybody that's working and doing anything, you need to submit tax returns. So it would be great if we can also get the tertiary institutions like the universities to maybe educate students and young people in terms of their finances. And we can bring that back to schools as well, even at school level. I can have a grade 12 or a matric, and after that, can also start my own company. But I know nothing about how to run a business or how to submit my taxes. So it's important that you trust opinions, but that you also do your own education to know that the info that you have or the products that you have, that you understand them and how they fit into your financial plan.
100%. And like something that might work for some, well, this person might not work for the next. So it is definitely important to always remember that it is something that you need to test. But you've mentioned books now. So is there a specific financial book or a few books that you can recommend that our listeners can actually read?
Well, there's a vast variety of them, and it depends on what you want to learn about. If it's about savings or how to start your own business, or how to invest, there's different categories. One book that I would really recommend that stands out is a book by Robert Kiyosaki. That the book's name, it's an old type of financial book, but it's a bestseller throughout the world. Is Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the book's name. But that's really a great book to read in terms of how to how to handle your finances, and maybe also how to handle your investments. It's got practical advice. It's not on a high level in terms of how does markets work but it gives you practical advice in terms of how to run your business and how to look at your investments as well. So that's maybe one book that I will recommend. Yes.
Yeah, and that is a really good book. Like, I know that's probably like the first financial slash entrepreneurship book that I read when I finished matric. And I must say it really made like a tremendous impact on me. And it also, like, sometimes I will just like have to make a decision, or a financial decision, and then I think back, like, what did I read in that book? So no, definitely a very good recommendation. Okay, so let's move over to emergency funds. Can you tell us what is an emergency fund? What would you typically pay with an emergency fund?
Okay. In the industry that we work in finances, we normally meet two types of clients. The one would be you're a business owner, so you've got your own business running. The other one would be a salaried employee. So you work for a company, and then you get a hybrid as well, where I might be working for a company, getting a salary, but I'm also having a business on the side. If you read a book like Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of his recommendations is start passive incomes to flow in. Don't only work on a salaried income. So you get that hybrid systems as well. Now, an emergency fund is a type of fund that's available should you not be able to do your profession or earn an income. Now you get insurance, and you get insurance products or risk products that can cover you in terms of a sickness. So say I earn a salary from a company and I become ill. There's insurance products that will pay me my income while I'm not able to earn it from my company. But there's not a lot of products available in terms of you might be losing your job or you might be retrenched. And I mean, in terms of those risks, that's high risks in the South African working environment. So emergency fund one would be there to stand in for your income while you might be without a job. And the second one will be the emergency fund will be where you still earn your income, but there's additional expenses that you didn't budget for. So for instance, if you drive any type of bigger vehicle in South Africa, you would know that to replace a tire on that vehicle will cost you anything between 3.5 to maybe 4. I see some of the prices is 5,000 Rand a tire. That's a big expense that you didn't budget for, that you immediately got that month. Now you need some type of emergency fund available to fund those expenses. Or you've got a fridge in your house and suddenly the fridge or the geyser breaks down. You've got short-term insurance to cover for some of that, but you need money immediately available to be able to budget for that type of emergency. So that's why we're looking for an emergency fund. So it can be two types. It can either be for small expenses that I haven't budgeted for, or either my income, where I know I'm working in an environment where retrenchments can happen every day, and maybe I need an emergency fund to carry me for my expenses for a certain period.
So how do you determine the size of the emergency fund that is needed?
Okay, so that's a very important question, because you'll get as many opinions as you get financial advisors out there. I would always say, if you look at your income, a good place to start is to say, I need a fund available that will be able to carry my expenses for at least 3 months. That doesn't mean it must carry my salary. Say I earn 50,000 Rand a month. It's not needed that emergency fund needs to have 150,000 Rand in that emergency fund, if I take that as a practical example, because my expenses are not necessarily 50,000 Rand a month. I need to look at certain expenses that I know I need to pay. I'm thinking of my medical aid or hospital plan. I need to pay that. If I don't pay it, I don't have cover. I need to pay my home loan if I've bought a property, my car installment, my short-term insurance, that expenses. So if you do a calculation, look at those expenses that you know those expenses need to be paid on a monthly basis, and that will give you the calculation of what you will need in that fund available. What's also important in terms of the emergency fund is, and you'll get different opinions about that as well. But if you still have debt that you're paying, say you've got a car loan that you're still paying off, or you've got a credit card and there's you owe money on the credit card. My advice would be that you really look in terms of rather paying off the debt first, before you start with a type of emergency fund. And that's the same criteria that I will follow in terms of investment. I get a lot of young professionals that will ask me, where do I invest money? But before you can start to invest or save, the best place to invest or save is first to pay off any debt, credit. Now, your home loan is something that you're not just going to pay off in a year. I mean, most of the home loans is 20 to 30 years. And normally the interest rate on the home loans are quite affordable. But the interest rate on something like a vehicle payment or a credit facility or a clothing account is quite high. So I would always advise clients there to rather first pay off the debt and then start with a type of savings or emergency fund. And if you think about a credit card, if I've got a credit card with, say, a credit facility of 20,000 Rand or 30,000 Rand, that can also act as an emergency fund. I know I'm not going to use it, but it's a type of emergency fund that's available. I know there's a red flag that if I have some type of expense and I need to use that credit facility, there's going to be high interest on that. But before you start to save or invest, rather first look at what's the interest I'm paying on my debt, and is it not a better plan to maybe just first pay off my debt before I have 50,000 Rand in an investment account, but I'm paying 27% on my credit card? That doesn't make financial sense.
Now, that's very good advice. So let's say somebody has now started their little emergency fund, and let's say they placed it in a savings account, and then they go onto their banking app and they keep on seeing that money and they are very tempted to use it. Do you have any tips that basically will motivate them to not touch that money and to keep it for emergencies only?
Yeah, we always try to put the emergency funds in a type of investment where it's a little bit more difficult to get to those funds. By saying that, remember, emergency fund must still be available. So don't put it into a notice deposit for the next 2 years or a fixed deposit where you need to wait 2 years to get the money. But I mean, most normal investments that you do on any of the investment platforms, the money is available within 7 days of requesting it. So in types of that, and normally to get to that money, you need to inform the advisor or the broker that I need access to the money, and then they go through the process to give you the money. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to get access to the money than on your banking app, like you've been saying, just going from your savings account and placing the money over into your transactional account. So rather put it in a type of investment where the money is a little bit fixed, but again, not fixed for 2 years or 3 years, because if it's an emergency fund, you need access to that type of money. Another example of that is also to place it maybe into your home loan. Normally with the banking, if you've got property financing, you'll be able to pay more into that account than what your monthly installment is. By doing that, you're also saving on interest, and it's still available to you. You can also request it from the bank, but it's a good place to park that money that's a little bit out of your transactional account. Don't keep it in your transactional account, because you're definitely going to use it.
Yeah. Well, that helped. I think it's a really good tips that you shared. So on the topic of emergency accounts or emergency funds, do you have anything else that you want to add before we move on?
Now, I think the important thing is just before you look at any type of savings or investment, remember that if you've got fixed expenses on a monthly basis, make provision to be able to cover those expenses, because none of us are sure that we'll be able to cover all expenses if we don't have income anymore. In terms of sickness and illnesses, there is great products available in the market that you can take out that will cover your income if you become sick or you can't do your profession or your occupation.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to the second part of this episode, which is financial planning before and during pregnancy. So, can you tell us how can financial planning actually help individuals who are planning to get pregnant, starting a family, to budget for all of those expenses? Either like the planned or the unplanned expenses that comes with pregnancy.
Okay, I'm currently a father of 3, and I can tell you from my own experience that you can never budget for children. I mean, the expense in terms of children, you think you can have the best savings account available for your children. I can promise you, with children, it just gets depleted. So in terms of budgeting, I think the important thing is, and you already alluded to that, to say, but just know that if you're planning a family, there's going to be additional expenses. So it's important to know that my budget's not going to work out like it's always been working out. Then in terms of planning for pregnancy, there's great financial products available that you can also apply for or buy that will assist you in terms of any complications with pregnancy, if there's any expenses in terms of complications. And why this is important is that, remember, with pregnancy, there can be a lot of medical expenses in terms of complications with pregnancy. The important thing is, if you're planning in terms of a family, you need to apply for these products before you are pregnant. You can't apply for them when you find out that you are pregnant. So then all insurance companies will just exclude the pregnancy. So it's important to have a conversation with somebody to set up those products before you are pregnant, because otherwise you won't have access to them. The second thing that's very important is you need some type of medical aid or either hospital plan. The expenses in terms of pregnancy, and not just pregnancy, but if the baby needs to go to ICU after the pregnancy, those expenses are crazy. I've got a lot of clients, I've got friends where those bills easily run up to 1 million to 1.5 million rand for 6 weeks in ICU. So those expenses are quite high. So I would always suggest that you make sure before you get pregnant that you have a medical aid and hospital plan in place. Again, if you take out a hospital plan and medical aid and you're already pregnant, it might be that the companies might exclude the pregnancy because they know there's very high expenses in terms of that. But that is very important. So there is great products, but have a conversation, educate yourself in terms of those products, get them in place. But the important aspect there is get them in place before the pregnancy. It's really important. Otherwise, companies will exclude those type of benefits. Maybe also what we get a lot of questions about is again, going back to where you work for a salary and where you work for yourself, where you have your own company. If you work for yourself, the time after your pregnancy, you're not going to be on maternity leave because it's your own company. So if it's your own company, remember to budget for those additional expenses for the time after the pregnancy where you want to be with your baby and you won't be able to be at work. In terms of working for a salary, there you've got the advantage of where you have maternity leave. You apply for maternity leave, and for those days that you're not at work, you'll be able to receive your salary. If you work in a commission environment like we in the financial industry, remember that they will only pay you your basic salary. Your commission part won't be part of your maternity benefit, so you need to budget for that additional loss in income. So it's just important to make provision for that. And then remember, if there's complications and you need to rest, or you need to maybe you've gone through a C-section and there's a period after the pregnancy where you need to rest, there is products available that will also cover your income for that time. although it's not an illness or sickness, it's still a medical condition. It's still an operation that you went through. So really speak to somebody that will be able to set those things in place, that if you're unable to work due to the pregnancy, even if you're on maternity leave, you can still claim your income for the time that you're in hospital. That's very important.
Wow. Okay, and I mean, like when you claim UIF, you don't like you rarely get the entire amount that you would have gotten if you worked. So, do you have any advice to supplement your income basically during that maternity leave period?
Okay, again, if you work for yourself, what I normally see in terms of clients that work for themselves, they don't take a 3 month maternity leave. It's impossible. So mostly women will be back after a month already again in their business, trying to get business. But it needs to take some planning, because you can never plan to say, but in my business, I'm going to be back after a month. It can be that there's complications and you can only be back after 2 or 3 months after your pregnancy. In terms of that, it's important to plan to have money available for that. But that's why it's important that either if you work for a salary or you work for yourself, there is financial products available that if there's complications, they will pay you. And this is before pregnancy and after pregnancy. So even it's 2 weeks before the pregnancy or before your C-section date, and you need to be booked off due to, say, back pain. There's products available that can pay you your income while you are booked off before the pregnancy. And that's very important. To have those type of products in place, because then you know that it's not going to have a financial impact on your income. Because remember, all your expenses still needs to be paid: your medical aid, your hospital plan, your short-term insurance, all of those, your pension fund, all of those expenses are still going to need to be paid.
Okay. And how do parents find the balance between budgeting or planning for future events like university or school and planning to pay the expenses that arise immediately, or let's say in the next year or two? How do you find that balance?
That's a good question. The thing is, I think it starts with early planning, and this takes a little bit of discipline. But when your first baby is born, it's important to already start with a type of investment for that baby at that age. So very important. If you're planning a family, if that first baby is born, start with a type of investment, even if it's a contribution of 100 Rand or 200 Rand towards that, but start when that baby is born. Don't prolong those type of savings to say, oh, I'm only going to save when they get close to university. The cost of university, I mean, to study at the Northwest University, I've looked at cost in the week. It's anything between 100,000 Rand to 120,000 Rand a year. So it's high costs. Yes, there's bursaries available. Yes, there's student loans available that will be able to help you. But if you don't start early with that, it's not that your children won't be able to study. But if you've got savings available, you just got more options. You've got options in terms of their future, and that's why it's important to start as early as possible. But set up an account. There's great accounts that you can set up, and you can name the account your children's name. So this savings account is called My Child's Name, and I know that all investment that can go in there. And when that account's open, you can send that account detail to all the grandparents and ooms and aunties out there and tell them whenever there's a birthday, you can contribute to this education fund of my firstborn or my secondborn. So that's maybe something that you can really look at. There's going to be additional expenses, but start as soon as possible with doing planning in terms of that. Maybe just the second thing that I want to highlight in terms of children. If you have children, and that we do see a lot, and you now want foster parents for that children, if should something happen to you or and your wife, it's important. And the same goes to my sister approached me and said she's got a boy and a girl. Would we be foster parents for those children if her and her husband's not there anymore? And it's so easy in that instance to say, yes, by all means, I take full responsibility. But if I look out of a budget perspective, I've got 3 children. If I add another 2 today, it's going to deplete my budget. I won't be able to look after them. And there's excellent products available that you can take out that makes provision so that if you and your husband or you and your wife's not there anymore, there's money available for the foster parents to look after those children. So we tend to forget that. We think life insurance and life policies are only there for once I have debt. But in terms of children, you can't not foresee for your children. If you're planning a family, make sure, one, that there's money available for if there's one parent left and your income is not there anymore. And the second part of planning is if both of you are not there, there's excellent products available at very good and affordable premiums that you can take out that makes provision for capital that's available if something should happen to you and your partner and your children need to go to foster parents. So very important to make that part of your plan.
I'm so happy that you actually mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of people these days, and I also see a lot of Facebook posts where people say, "Oh, I'm so honored. I am the So if something would happen to my friends, then I would be responsible for their child or whatever." And I think that we just assume that something will not happen and it's just like an honor that's bestowed upon us. But like we need to think about the future and the real financial implications that it might actually include. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners in regards to pregnancy or children and financial planning?
No, I think it's just important. The word that you're saying is planning. You need to plan. Remember, in terms of where we spoke about a type of parents where you want your children to go to, it also alludes to the fact that if you don't choose anybody and maybe the grandparents are going to look after your children, that's also important. I mean, if you have parents my age, they're quite close to retirement and retired already. They don't have the income anymore to be able to now look after two children. It's a big expense. I need to provide for them that if the children needs to go to the grandparents, there needs to be money available for them to look after the children. And I mean products that's only there for them. What's very important in terms of the money there, you don't have to give the people that's looking after the children access to the money. You can set up a trust to say, but I trust this person in my life or this advisor to look after the trust and the money, but I know there's going to be money available to look after the children. So that's very important to do that type of planning, but important in terms of pregnancy. Don't start too late. Get the things in place and plan ahead, because when you are pregnant or when the children are there, it might be too late for certain products to get certain products in place.
Leonard, thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared with our listeners. I know that I, for one, learned a lot from you. Can you just tell our listeners where they can reach you if they want to make use of your services?
Yes, the easiest way to contact me is I communicate on WhatsApp, I communicate on LinkedIn. I do use email, although in these days I know email is really more for business use. But I know I'll share my info in the description on the YouTube channel as well. And everybody's more than welcome to get in contact with me if they've got any questions. I'm more than willing to help them with that.